Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at Riderflex. We hope you enjoy today's podcast. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the Riderflex show for updates on new episodes. And by the way, if you haven't already, check out the book we recently launched, The Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring, available for purchase on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Kourtny Garrett on the Riderflex podcast. Good morning, Kourtny.
Good morning. Great to be here.
I see the background there. You're downtown, which is where you operate.
Absolutely. Right in the heart of the city.
I was studying all of your stuff before the call this morning and yesterday, and I'm assuming you're a Texas girl, or did you just go down there for college? What's the story there?
Well, I am actually a Colorado native. I was born at St. Joe's, so St. Joe's proud. My family moved to Texas when I was 10, but my parents had divorced, so my mom moved with my brothers and me to North Texas area. My dad stayed here, so we grew up coming back and forth and have a lot of family and friends in the area. So this has always been kind of a switch between a first and second home. And, after spending the majority of time in North Texas, particularly in Dallas, and building a career there, we decided a year ago to shift and shake things up.
Well, okay. So you went to school you went to college down there too. Tell me though about so your parents got divorced when you were young. What were you, 10, 11? Would you say 10?
It was 10.
That's a tough age. Was that, did that shape you in any way? Do you think that's made you a little bit who you are going through that? How did that affect you?
Oh, I think if anything, it's taught me that what's best for kids is to have your parents happy. And that, I think, is much better kind of going through that separation than necessarily having to live through a household that is not one that you just constantly feel the love and the happiness. So I don't really look at it as something that's impacted in a negative way. In fact, we moved around quite a bit, both when my mother and biological father were still married and then thereafter, and we didn't really settle in one place until I was in middle school. And frankly, I think that's really helped with the ability to adapt to change and be able to come into new environments and meet people and feel very comfortable. So I just look at it as a part of the seasoning, that goes into who you are.
Yeah, probably shaped your people skills and your communication skills in a ton of ways, moving around, changing schools, changing environments, learning how to I got to make new friends over here. And all that stuff really shapes who you are. You had siblings, brothers, sisters?
Yes, two younger brothers. I'm 5 years older than my middle brother and about 10 years older than my youngest brother. And unfortunately, we lost my middle brother at the end of 2018. He lived here in Denver, and he passed away in October of 18. But close in our hearts. Yeah.
That's tough. Okay, I'm sorry. And is your mom still in Texas?
She is. She's in the neighborhood where we most recently moved from, and we're working to get her up here eventually, but I'm really lucky. I still have, at 45 years old, I still have my grandparents.
Really?
So my mother and my grandparents, were her parents, are house sharing, and she helps to take care of them. So it's a bigger move. It's a bigger move for them, but hopefully we'll get mom up here soon.
I see. Your mom didn't remarry then? She didn't know?
She did, and then divorced again.
Okay. All right.
All right. Adaptability.
Was your stepdad cool, or was he an asshole?
No, he's amazing. I mean, he came in and immediately just joined as dad and was at the drill team. I was a drill team stinger in Rockwall, Texas. So I can pull that out for you. But yeah, he worked all the concession stands and did all the things with us. So really
sounds like a good guy. So you're still in contact with him then, huh?
Absolutely. He's in Atlanta right now.
Okay, very good. Did your dad remarry in Colorado?
He did, and then he also divorced. He's in Galveston now. I have a very complex family tree.
Hey, we all do.
I know, right?
We all do.
Yeah.
There's no, you sometimes like you watch a movie or a TV or something and it shows this like perfect family where everybody just, it's just never like that. It's never like that.
I know. I mean, I'm lucky, knock on wood, my husband and I are going on 20 years together. So
Oh,
yeah,
congratulations. All right.
thank
Congrats.
you.
How'd you meet him?
It was a setup,
Oh,
actually.
oh,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a friend. Oh yeah. Tell me about it. I want to give me the story.
Yeah, my best friend from the fifth grade, fast forward to our early 20s, she
Okay.
was dating the then drummer in my husband's band. So
Oh,
they were musicians. And they both kept saying, we want to set you two up. We want to set you two up. And we were both saying, no, no, no. And then finally we gave in and went out to dinner with our friends, a little double date. And he and I ended up sitting at the bar going Corona for the rest of the night
nice.
and moved
Nice.
in together 3 months later.
Was this in Austin?
This was in Dallas.
This was in Dallas. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So you already out of school.
And I actually, my college, Austin College is in Sherman. It's a
Oh, it is.
misnomer.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's
Okay.
a small liberal arts school in Sherman, Texas, and
Okay.
literally kind of the only thing in that city.
Sorry. Okay. Gotcha. All right.
Yeah.
He was in a band, so that's kind of
Mhm.
cool. So does he still play? Does he do anything?
No, he just plays around with the kids a little bit for fun. But he turned that in and he's now in the wine and spirits business. He and some partners have an important distribution company, but
Oh,
so my father is a musician, my stepfather's a musician, my youngest brother's a musician. So I am absolutely a cliche. And that I
uh,
married both of my fathers.
all right. All right. Very good. So you said 2 children? How many kids you
Yes,
got?
two
And
kids.
how old are they? How old are they?
They're 10, twins, boy girl twins.
Oh, all
Yeah,
right. All
yeah.
right.
So they're loving life. They're living their best life here in Denver, which has been incredible to watch.
That's great. And 20 years of marriage. Okay. So what happened then? You had a great run down in Dallas, right? I mean, really, just for the listeners, and I'm sure that they're going to look up Kourtny Garrett on LinkedIn probably. You were either almost 19 years, 20 years at downtown Dallas.
It
Right. It's
was.
kind of this. Yeah. I mean, what happened? Like you're like, I just want to move to Colorado. I'm done here. What?
Well, I won't go too far back, but I started my career in lifestyle centers, did a short jaunt in hospital PR, and then jumped into the downtown management world.
Yeah.
And just love, for me, what we do as city builders is something that's truly in your soul. And so I had such a connection to Dallas, having, spent the majority of my later youth there and building my career. And so for me, the job was as much about being a planner and a designer and, kind of a policy expert as it was really digging in and loving the city.
Okay.
So tie that as to why we're here. The only other city that I could see having that much passion, because I'll tell you, these jobs are very challenging at times.
Yeah.
They're incredibly rewarding and incredibly challenging. So that's why I think you have to have such a personal passion in order to be successful. And there's really no other city I would have that passion for than Denver. And my husband, John, and I would often say, retirement will move to the mountains, because even though he's Dallas born and bred, he's the typical Texan who's coming up and skiing multiple times a year.
Gotcha.
So we always kind of said, oh, when the kids are gone, that's probably where we'll end up. And it was just kind of this fortuitous turn of events. I was not looking to leave Dallas whatsoever. I knew my predecessor fairly well because we've been in the same industry for a long time. And she announced that she was leaving, and a couple of my friends in the market pinged me and said, when are you coming? And it's really, it's a sweet story, not to belabor the point, but I was actually standing in the airport in Jackson Hole with my 2 kids. My husband had just dropped us off. We'd been on a 3-week, the COVID road trip vacation that everybody takes.
Yeah.
We were wrapping that up. And so the kids and I were flying here to Denver to see my aunt, who lives in Centennial. And he was going to drive home and fish and take the dogs and so on. So anyway, we're standing in the Jackson Hole airport when that call came that Tammy Dorr had announced that she was leaving. So there's just a whole slew of signs from the universe that kept happening. So as adults, we just kind of said,
yeah,
why not?
Yeah. It's almost kind of meant to be right there. Things happen for a reason. I always believe that. And you'd spent almost 20 years moving your
Right.
way up through the organization and Dallas. By the way, congratulations. They're great.
Thank you.
Just, one promotion
Mhm.
after another. Really awesome. Yeah, probably a good move. They're 20 years, yeah, good
Yeah.
move. And, besides that, hey, Texas is great, but boy, June, July, and August is just, man, I don't know.
It is.
Last time I was down in Dallas, like in July or August, I was like, holy shit, I forgot how hot it is down here. Like,
Right. Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. But yeah, I mean, that definitely the 20-year mark. And one of the
yeah,
great things about these roles, and I think for anyone, when you've invested that much time and energy into your career, there comes a moment where it's very hard to let go. But
Mm.
it was a time when I realized that so much of what I've been working on for the last decade or 2 decades, because urban redevelopment takes a long time, we were able to celebrate. And so it was a nice
Great.
moment to say it's time for the next push. It's time for the next person to come in with
And your husband's distribution business or import business, he was able to move that, or he works remotely. How'd that work?
Yeah, actually, this was another one of the signs from the universe. He went to his partners before we officially put my name in the hat and said, we're thinking about this. Is it a deal breaker for the partnership? And their CEO at the time, they didn't realize, had been speccing business here in Colorado. So they were really moving toward wanting one of the partners to move here anyway.
Wow.
And they've since announced a merger. And so they're doing business here in the state of Colorado.
Wow. Okay. Yep. All that came together for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Very good. Very good. Well, congrats on all of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Give us the downtown Denver partnerships overview. And I think it'd be best to just kind of do it from a completely, I'm ignorant to the whole thing. Just kind of give it to me. Like, I don't even know what this is. Like, the first time I've seen it, I think it's good for you to share it that way for the listeners.
Yeah.
Give us the commoner explanation.
Right. I think a good place to start, because a lot of people, and I didn't even know that these types of organizations existed. There's not really a degree program. Downtown management organizations or urban place management organizations. So on the whole, as an industry, we are nonprofits that sit at the intersection between the public sector and the private sector. So we operate with private boards. We're not, like I said, a nonprofit organization, but we work very closely with municipal government specifically in order to advance projects and bringing both of the entities, again, private sector and public sector, together. At the Downtown Denver Partnership, and these organizations have a number of different functions depending on the city. At the Downtown Denver Partnership, you can think of us on a multitude of levels. We work on a strategic front on issues related to public policy, economic development, long-term urban planning. So the Downtown Denver Area Plan, for example, is something that we steward, and we'll be going through an update of that very soon. So those things that really impact and plan for our city in the future, we're intimately involved in, and bring private sector stakeholders to the table, as well as the community, to give input and help guide those city processes. Then we also have what I call our on the ground programs. So we manage what's called a business improvement district, which is an assessment on any properties within a given geography. Ours is, of course, downtown, where property owners elect to pay an increased assessment for supplemental services to what the city provides. So I say it's kind of, for the layman, it's kind of like a giant big commercial HOA. So we're funded in order to provide, we have private security downtown. We also have a supplemental, what we call our clean team. So they're doing maintenance work, a lot of landscaping, and then we're able to do some capital improvements, marketing, and special events. So you'll see the Downtown Denver Partnership doing everything from producing Taste of Colorado and the Parade of Lights, which we're very proud of, those two signature events, to me sitting in front of the state legislature earlier this year to address the fentanyl bill. So it's quite broad what we do as organizations, which is what's kept me at it for over 20 years.
Wow. Is your primary role as the president and CEO fundraising and asking billionaires to write checks, or are you, what does your tactical daily routine look like as the president? I'm curious.
Right. It is so far and wide. There definitely is a fundraising element. So our two primary funding sources are that business improvement district and then voluntary membership dues. So typically what you would look at is kind of a chamber. So those are two, and then we have some contracts with the city and different grants. But Part of it is fundraising. A lot of it is to build consensus and bring different community groups and stakeholder groups together. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm trying to keep that little bit of the cough away, as I said earlier. So, my typical day, let's say, for example, yesterday started the day with 2 calls that were internal calls, really looking at how to manage our employee base. We held a large community briefing regarding a safety initiative that we're launching later this week in partnership with the mayor's office. Had a couple of calls with different city departments related to specific development projects that are happening downtown, and then had a member check-in call, just seeing how the member's doing. So it's the spokesperson of the organization, but as a small organization, it's also really digging in, and I love the programs. I love what we do on a daily basis, so digging in a little bit with the team on that as well.
If I was planning on opening a restaurant downtown, buying a building, well, let's say I was going to buy the building too, and open a restaurant, and would you be the person, your organization, would I call you and be like, hey, can you help me with this, Kourtny? Like, what do I do? Permits, this, that, I don't know. Do you help me with that? Is that?
Absolutely. That's a huge part of what we do. And we're involved, whether it's a large anchor corporation or some of our small businesses who are coming into the market. So we can help facilitate, and it's exactly that. It's the how-to manual. We can say, here are some resources that are available to you. We actually administer some grants for businesses along 16th Street right now because of some reconstruction that's happening. We're running a program called Pop-Up Denver, which is entrepreneurs from throughout the city. We've done a call for storefronts, and we had our first 5 open over the summer. And we're expanding with 10 more businesses. We've got an open call out right now for new businesses to come in. So it's really facilitating all of those processes. We're not the city, so we don't do the permits. We don't provide, that type of resource, but we can help navigate.
And do I pay you for that, or it's a free service because you're a nonprofit and you, okay.
For the good of the community.
Wow. Okay. I love that. So the 16th Street Mall, I didn't know there was a major project underway. Has it started or it's about to start? Can you tell us about that?
So earlier this year, we kicked off a $150 million project to reconstruct the 16th Street Mall.
Okay.
It is dealing with a lot of infrastructure issues. The mall opened in 1982. So believe it or not, the mall's 40 years old.
Wow.
So the reconstruction will address some of the infrastructure issues. It's also taking the buses and moving them to the interior of the street so that we have more room for cafes, pedestrian space. And then you'll see a whole new, what we call a public realm plan. So new public art installations, activity centers, just really reviving and bringing life back to that signature spine in Denver.
And how does that, okay, so somebody at the city council, I don't know who decides these things, the mayor, whatever, somebody decides, hey, we need to redo the 16th Street Mall. And then instead of just signing a construction outfit, some contractor to do it, do they call you and say, hey, help me get this organized with the right contractors and all that? How does that, what's the communication flow look like there?
A construction project of the magnitude of 16, the way that one's worked, when the city has their public works department, they have their Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. So they're really managing the hard and fast construction elements. They have a contractor and that's moving forward. We're there to help. We've advised on the design in a very significant way. We are helping to facilitate and really market and communicate what's happening to the public. So we help to create the brand for construction. And then this business operation mitigation grant program is something that the city has given us a pool of money to be able to help those businesses who are impacted by construction with grants to subsidize operations through the headache period or the growing pains period.
Oh, okay. Very interesting, right? Yeah, I guess if I owned a restaurant down there and you're about to block my doors for 2 weeks building a sidewalk, I'd be filing for something.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, very good. And what is your organization's role in the homeless situation downtown and the tents and the things like that. Are you involved in that? Do you help with that? Can you just talk to me about that? Because I live in Northern Colorado. I live up near Loveland, but
Mhm.
when I come downtown over the last 12 months or so, I'm like, okay, I feel like there's more tents than there used to be. I don't know. Maybe there's not.
Sure.
What is your role in that? Can you talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit?
Well, first, what's interesting is organizations like ours sit in this position that is quite unique because we are not policymakers. We have
Okay.
no regulatory authority, and we're not crisis intervention or social service workers. So we really sit in a place of looking to facilitate partnerships and solutions in creative ways. So as it relates to homelessness, first and foremost, I always want to make sure that we're separating the issues of homelessness from crime, because all too often we see kind of they are certainly interrelated, unfortunately, in certain cases, but they are two very separate and distinct issues. We need strong enforcement as it relates to crime and public safety. We need compassionate response as it relates to those experiencing homelessness and mental health and drug misuse. What we've seen across the country, and coming during this pandemic, basically from Dallas to Denver, and having a network of colleagues across the country, we're seeing an increase in the unhoused, an increase in mental health, drug epidemic. All of these are impacting every city in the country. So from our perspective, we're working with all of our social service providers in the area, particularly those who are providing street outreach in downtown, and trying to help support those additional resources, because we are.
How do you do that? Like, what is your support? What do you do?
We help to kind of inform where we're seeing significant
I see.
clusters.
Okay.
So we have, with our security team, we have 18 security officers who are out on the street every day, also trained in crisis intervention. So from our own perspective, when they encounter someone, they will engage and try and understand if there's a resource or a navigator that they can connect that individual to. So what we'll also do is then communicate that information back to our service providers and say, hey, there's some additional support that's needed in this particular area. We're also looking at some funding models as well to be able to bring more boots on the ground out into the street. So there's the tactical everyday, and then there's the higher level policy where we're engaged with a lot of the citywide and region-wide conversations to bring more coordination and long-term planning to the system as a whole. Because of the complexities, we've got to look at policy. We have to look at how we are treating with compassion and connecting those. Again, the mental health and drug misuse issues in our community right now are far and wide, and we need to make those connections and solutions.
Is that topic a big part of your day to day right now, or it's a small piece? So I'm curious.
It's absolutely, it's very significant. And again, I want to be clear when we're talking about homelessness versus crime, and where we're seeing that true increase in crime on our streets. I would say right now, what we're seeing related to crime is a huge part of our attention. And we'll be rolling out some new initiatives in partnership with the City and County of Denver Police Department, and RTD Police later this week, to infuse resources to address both crime as well as our mental health and substance misuse cases in the streets.
Will those resources basically mean more boots on the street to just eyes and people to help and alert police, or maybe try to calm something down, or what does that resource look like?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a full court press, multidisciplinary, again, really leveraging resources related to law enforcement, related to mental health, substance abuse, even looking at how we are addressing the environment. So where we have, litter and debris, making sure that that's getting cleaned up. I'd say the other role for our organization, which is one that is definitely our sweet spot, is that a lot of this is chicken and egg. So Urban Planning 101 tells you the more people that you have in an area, it then becomes safer in both perception and reality. And the fact that on March 13th, 2020, we lost 100,000 people from the center of our city when the world shut down, and that's our daytime population of office workers. That's naturally going to have an impact on your environment. And again, this is what we've seen true in every city in America. So we're having to rebuild from that. We're sitting at about half of our daytime workforce back right now, 52%. So we really need,
wow, it's that wow. I thought it was a higher number than that. Only 52% back. So let me make sure I understand what you just said. If you just look at all the high-rise buildings and think about all the office workers downtown, you're telling me that only 50% of that group generally is back in the office day to day so far?
correct.
Wow. Okay.
Which is
that is
actually about 4 percentage points higher than the national average in cities our size. So there's that plus. So we're recognizing that the workforce is changing.
no doubt.
The way that we work is changing. As I said, if not for having COVID myself at the moment, I would be downtown because we need people to come back to the office, come downtown, spend money and spend time. On the upside, we are back to pre-pandemic levels in the evenings and on weekends. Our hospitality and visitor traffic is back to where it was pre-pandemic as well. So that demand is still there. So the conversation, I think, is less about people coming back downtown and more about a societal, how are we going to work moving into the future? And then we need to rethink what that means for downtown.
Agreed. And, I think that, man, we could do a whole podcast on this topic. With more and more people working remotely, your daytime lunch crowd may never come back to what it was, right? But if you can at least get them back to downtown to enjoy the evening festivities and events and dinner, that helps. But I don't know if with remote work, I think some of the lunch cafes and things like that, it may never come back to what it was. I don't know, because so many people are working remotely, and then that causes people to move away. They don't have to drive downtown. Maybe they, or whatever. So yeah, I can see where you're battling. It's not just a COVID situation. It's this now push to work remotely, and people don't want to come back to the office just because it's convenient not to have to commute. And that affects everybody downtown, right? Affects everybody. Yeah. During this whole time, I always thought, boy, I would not want to be a business owner downtown that depended on foot traffic right now over the last 2 years, because, you're losing a ton of traffic. Okay. Yeah. You need to entice me as a listener. You got to get me downtown, right? You got to get me, because I want to go downtown. It's interesting. I want to go downtown. Here's why I don't want to go downtown. I don't want to go downtown for two reasons right now. And I live in Loveland. So for the listeners, that's probably 45 minutes from downtown up north, going up the highway, right? The reason my wife and I don't go downtown right now are two reasons. A, I-25 sucks with traffic. And B, I am concerned about the tents and the homeless thing. And it's not as pleasant as it used to be. And so if you can get a high-speed train to get me downtown super fast, and you can clean it up, I'll come more often. I know it's a lot easier.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we have a few opportunities. I mean, one, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that one of our significant priorities right now is also looking at a trend or a tool called adaptive reuse, where we're taking old office space and converting it into residential, because what we are continuing to see is a huge demand for downtown living. So the more, if we do end up seeing that office contraction, then we can have more people living, which then begets greater retail, more restaurants, more things to do, so that you will be willing to sit in traffic on I-25 or take public transit to get downtown.
I've often thought that. I've told so many people over the last 2 years, I'm like, all these high rises where it used to be cubicles of workers, it's going to be turned into residential stuff. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But I will say, as we look at, there's so much positive momentum in downtown. And I think that's why we are all so sensitive to the vulnerabilities we're facing today, because there's $2 billion worth of construction, investment in construction that's going on in downtown right now. The majority of that is mixed use and residential, with a little bit of new office coming in. We've seen amazing progress. Even in 2021, we had over $1 billion of development that a lot of people haven't seen yet. So with your perception that downtown is, filled with a lot of tents, I would say
just
have
more
you
than
been,
more
have
than
you
I
come in
remember.
the last year, right?
Yeah.
And so we need people to come back and experience all the progress that has been made, and we know is only going to get better.
I feel like listening to you, this is a fascinating job you have, because I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm like, man, she's got the mayor calling her. She's got the police chief calling her. She's got all these leaders of these different things calling saying, hey, Kourtny, can your organization help with this? Can your organization? You can pull in a lot of, I'm assuming you are pulled in a lot of different directions with phone calls from all kinds of people on a regular basis.
It makes for very busy days, I'll say that. But that's a great thing about this community that I've found, is that it's not just calling and asking for things, it's saying, what can we do to help you as well, right? So everyone's really leaned into solutions.
Gotcha. So that's who else do you deal with? You're dealing with all the city leaders and the commissioner. I don't know who, I'm trying to think of other titles, but I guess you're dealing with all of them, right? Does politics get in the way of stuff sometimes? You know, does that affect things with your organization sometimes? I'm guessing it does.
Oh, of course, of course. I mean, I think politics affects everything we do, whether it's at home or at work right now. And I think one of the challenges for us is we're looking at a lot of these fundamental issues, public safety, housing, even just the public realm, transportation, because the narrative nationally has become so polarized in our politics that it's very hard to find and really push people to the logical middle, is kind of how I refer to it.
I blame social media for that pulverizing attitude, right? Social media has pushed people into that deeply divided mentality instead of coming to the middle. Right? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow right there, but I blame.
No. I think there's certainly an element to that, and just what has become acceptable. To be able to, you know, it's so challenging when we're trying to come forth with pragmatic solutions that are good for the community, and to have to wade through a lot of the extremes on both sides to get to, you know, truly, and, you know, we're just trying to do the right thing for our city at the end of the day, and for our community. So that it does create a challenge.
Do you keep yourself in the middle? Are you very careful to keep yourself in the middle so that you don't have either side mad at you when you're trying to get stuff done?
Yeah, I mean, we do. It really depends on the issue. I mean, there are some issues where we feel very strongly and take a very strong position. Okay. Getting fentanyl off the streets is one example where we put full court press at the state legislature when the fentanyl bill came forward earlier this year. And so that's really important to our community. Those things that maybe don't directly impact downtown, I mean, we approach things again from the logical middle. So I would say it's apolitical in the way that we approach and look at where we take positions. Mm-hmm. You know, we will get involved in the municipal candidate elections that are coming up in the spring.
Oh, you will? You will. So that's a great question. So your organization will back candidates on one side or the other?
We will not endorse specific candidates, but what we will do is we have published our policy priorities. So we'll go through a process by which we have a working group of our members who interview all the candidates, and then we'll put out a report that talks about how those candidates align with the priorities of the partnership. So it's not direct endorsement of one or more candidates. It's really just looking at the landscape and who we feel really fits the downtown priorities.
Boy, you are having to navigate in some tricky waters sometimes, my friend. I mean, I'm just listening to you. I'm thinking, wow, she has learned how to waltz through some tricky dances. Are you interested in politics yourself? Are you thinking this is yeah, okay. I'm not the first person to ask you that, I'm guessing.
No, that was one of the ploys to get me to stay in Dallas, was a nudge to run for mayor.
Yeah, so
not my world.
You wouldn't do it. You wouldn't if they.
No, I have the best of both worlds.
Right.
You know, I work for private sector. I work very closely with public sector. We have influence over policy in the way that our city is built without necessarily the bureaucracy of politics. So I leave those to those who have much thicker skin than I do.
I mean, yeah, but you got to have pretty thick skin to do what you do, I would think. I mean, you know, you're getting hit from all kinds of sides. I want to ask, you know, as we get towards the back end of this, I just want to go a little bit deeper on. I want to ask, like, what would you do if you had the power? Kind of questions, like if you could wave a magic wand. I want to ask about the tent situation specifically on properties. Do you think, and this may be a tough question, you may not want to answer it. If I own $1 million piece of property near downtown and I live downtown and I have a little grass section out front next to the street that is mine or whatever, and I call you and I say, Kourtny, I want these homeless people out. I don't want them in front of my house. Move them. Would you, if you had the power, would you move them or would you tell me to just deal with it? What would you do?
Oh, that's a really hard question. The moving scenario is not effective. We've seen that. When I was in Dallas.
It helps me as a property owner. I feel better.
Well, and and this is where you may say it's a little bit of a political answer, but I really think it's the truth. I would rather see a system set up that instead of moving, calls immediate crisis intervention workers out and tries to approach from a place of outreach to move that individual or those individuals into a more stabilized situation versus, say, sending the cops in to just say, you got to move along. Because truly all that's doing is displacing the problem from one place to another. And, I can say that with a bit of now expertise, which I never thought that I would have. In Dallas, we saw a gap in street outreach in the city, and we saw a need. So we actually started our own street outreach program with my former organization. So I had crisis intervention workers on my staff who were going out and making that individual outreach, because we saw that even with 50 security officers who were trained in crisis intervention, all we were doing was displacing the problem and not creating long-term solutions. So I'm a big believer in that.
That was a pretty political answer, Kourtny. I don't know.
It's the truth, though. I mean, that's how I feel. That would be my magic wand. You said if I had my magic wand, that's what it would be.
I always think about that when I go downtown. That's kind of how I think of it, right? I'm like, damn, I want to, I want these people to need help. And my emotional piece comes out too, right? My heart goes out to them, and I know, it's mental illness, it's drug addiction, it's all these things. But then I think about the property owner, and I'm like, I live in Johnstown. I said Loveland earlier. I'm just thinking about in Johnstown. I live in Johnstown at my house. If a homeless person put a tent in front of my house here, I would be like, no, dude, you're not doing that. I don't care what your mental health problem is. I mean, I feel sorry for you, but you're not going to put a tent in front of my house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always think about both sides. In my head, I'm always wrestling with that. When I go downtown, I'm like, boy, this is a tough situation because I feel for them, but I don't want them on my property, this and that. But I do agree that I'm not an expert on this, but everybody I've talked to, and I've had a bunch of people on the podcast talk about this topic, the mental illness and the drug addiction. I mean, it's not really a homeless problem, right? It's a mental illness problem and a drug addiction problem for the most part that causes the homelessness. Is that fair to say? Would you agree with that?
Or I would say it can be a cycle too. You could have someone who falls into poverty, becomes homeless, and because we have so many of what I would say are those intending harm, so drug dealers going out, you have a vulnerable population. So if you enter homelessness, not already suffering from drug addiction or mental health substances, the adage is the longer you are homeless, the longer you will stay unhoused. And I think that just that environment starts to exacerbate and becomes a very difficult cycle to break. So I think it's hard to pinpoint, the cause. I think if as a nation we could determine the cause, we would be in a much different place, but it's certainly a contributing factor and the cause for some.
I can relate to it. I want to share this with the listeners. My ex-wife is bipolar and schizophrenic. And my grown sons are trying to take care of her. But as my oldest boy tells me, he's like, Dad, she wants to be homeless. Like they've got her, they put her in places. She won't stay. She will not stay. Right. They've tried to get her housing. They've done, you name it. They have tried everything. They put her in so many different places. They've gotten her apartment, whatever. she'll think the apartment's haunted and she'll leave or whatever. I mean, she just, and he's just like, I don't know what to do. Like, it's almost like she wants to be homeless and I can't unless we put her in jail or I can't make her stay. So that's why I can relate to the mental illness is a real problem. And then you tie in the drugs and all that. It's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. Well, I'll depend on you to get with the mayor and get all this solved next week.
Well, and I mean, since you were forthcoming, I will share with you, and I think this helps with the perception and really where we have such a significant issue, particularly with the opioid crisis here in Denver. As I mentioned that I lost my brother at the end of 2018. He worked for a local oil company, successful, mid-30s, not yet married, just living his best life, and was a party drug user. And unfortunately used and came across something that was not expected, and it killed him.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And, so I think,
was it something laced with fentanyl?
We suspect it was before, it was right as fentanyl was hitting this market.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So it's just, and I offer that really as just the tale as we think about, again, this sort of approach to homelessness, mental health, drug misuse. And I think a lot of times we have this mental image in our head of who those individuals are. And it's affecting so many more people in our community. And not just our community, it's all over the nation right now.
Why don't we talk about it more as a nation, that the fentanyl is killing more people than anything else right now in this country, and yet nobody talks about it?
I know. I am a part of, we have a trade association called the International Downtown Association. I'm on their policy committee, and we were up in DC about a month ago, really intending to advocate for a piece of legislation that helps with adaptive reuse. But we opened up this conversation to say, typically we've seen the federal government really push issues related to housing and public safety and crime at the local level, but these are becoming such common issues nationwide that we really need to be working together. And when we think about the patterns of, drug distribution and how that's coming into our country, not everything that's coming through Colorado is staying in Colorado. So it's much more than just an issue for our state.
Did you vote for the psilocybin thing? You want to tell everybody how you voted?
I'll keep that to myself.
Oh, come on, Kourtny. You can tell us what your ballot looks like. By the way, today's voting day, right? Today's voting day. When we're recording this on voting day.
I know. It sure is. It's a big day.
You probably already voted. I'm sure you voted early.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. You sure you're not? I tell you what, you're a pretty polished politician. I don't know. I think you might somebody might push you to run for mayor. I don't know. or something even bigger. I don't know. No interest.
No. But thank you. That's kind.
Yeah. I mean, you got all the right, you got all the right things for it. And you're careful to answer questions, but you do answer them, which I really like. Some people just won't answer questions, and you have. Okay, very good. So if anybody wants to help or contribute, what's the best thing for them to do? If they want to donate, or if they want to, do you take volunteers or you just take donations? How can we address the listeners to help you?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. I mean, I think first and foremost, this call for people to come spend time and money downtown is a big one. So that's the easy one. Just come downtown, particularly if you haven't been in the last 2 years. And the media has not done us any favors with a lot of the narrative that's been going on about downtown. And I assure you that there are some really special things. Parade of Lights is coming up. So if you need an event, come down for Parade of Lights. So just supporting us in that way is huge. In terms of our organization at downtowndenver.com, we have volunteer opportunities as well as opportunities to engage as a member. So we can certainly visit about that further.
Oh, so you do have volunteer stuff that you don't have to give money. You can just volunteer.
We do. I mean, our volunteer efforts, because we have a small staff, they're generally kind of surrounding our big events and things like that. But we certainly can make those connections. We also have a lot of connections within the downtown community, social service providers, for example, that will channel volunteers to.
Okay, very good. downtowndenver.com is the website. And Kourtny Garrett, you're not a big LinkedIn user, I noticed.
I, yes, I know. I updated it all when I moved, and then it becomes so overwhelming
I believe it.
that I need to clear that out. But yeah, unfortunately, time with a full-time plus job and 2 kids, keeping up with my social media has not been the best.
Yeah,
So.
I totally understand. You do a great job of organizing it and managing it. Congratulations on your wonderful career. Great career.
Thank you.
And kudos to the job that you do. It would take a lot of patience to deal with. You got some big egos. Huge egos. You're dealing with people calling you. You're doing. I can't imagine. So yeah, kudos to you, my friend, for the job you're doing. Thank you, Kourtny, for being on the show and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to amplify it.